Welcome to Let's Talk Criterion. In this edition, we look at a double feature from Taiwanese director Edward Yang, a Confucian Confusion and Mahjong, both coming to the collection on Blu-ray. Edward Yang already has two films in the collection. That's the excellent A Brighter Summer Day and Yi Yi. Edward Yang had a flash of insight at a very young age when he came across Werner Herzog's Aguirre, The Wrath of God, his film from 1972. Now, this film became a powerful inspiration to Yang, reminding him that magnificent films could be made without an extravagant budget. So the story goes. When growing up, Yang thought he would please his parents and, to that end, travelled a path that would lead to conventional successes. After receiving his graduate degree in electrical engineering from the University of Florida in the mid-1970s, Yang stayed in the USA and worked as an engineer for several years. He finally realised what he really wanted, and unsurprisingly, knowing or not knowing what one really wants became a consistent theme in several of his films. Having made up his mind in the early 1980s, he came back to Taiwan and launched a 20-year career that was only too short for his immense talent and brilliance. As a leading figure of the Taiwan new cinema, inaugurated by the omnibus film In Our Time from 1982, Yang conducted a series of marvellously unyielding inquiries into the trials and tribulations of contemporary life in Taipei through 7¼ feature-length films, ending with Yi Yi in 2000. His first film was In Our Time, a Taiwanese anthology co-directed with Yi Chang, Ko Yi Chen, and Tao Te Chen, and it consisted of vignettes each set in a different decade. After this, he directed alone with That Day on the Beach from 1983, Taipei Story from 1985, Terrorizers 1986, and A Brighter Summer Day 1991, before he came onto A Confucian Confusion. In the Confucian Confusion, we see how the crisscrossing paths of a group of young friends, lovers, and acquaintances converge in contemporary Taipei over a period of 3 days and nights. Now, we're looking here at the 4K digital restoration from 2022, which premiered at the 79th Venice Film Festival. A collection of conflicted urbanites find themselves lost in a rapidly changing society in Edward Yang's bitterly ironic social drama, A Confucian Confusion. Floundering in the post-marital law society, they struggle with the new freedoms of the democratic future, torn between the blind obedience of the authoritarian past and the risky business of having to figure out who they are and what they want in a Taipei that seems to have lost soul to rapidly advancing consumerism. A Confucian Confusion is centred on a tangled web of young professionals in Taipei who are all somehow connected, either via work, love, or a messy combination of the two. Molly, Ni Shu Chun, runs an advertising agency with an iron fist, though the company would be on the verge of going under if it weren't for a financial infusion from her rich fiancé, Akim, Chen Yi Wen. Akim was originally engaged to Molly's sister, Chen Li Mai, a talk show host, but she broke it off when she fell in love with a novelist, Hung Hung. Said novelist has written a book about Confucius, returning to modern society and being displeased with what he finds. Akim suspects that Molly is having an affair, though he has had a hard time pinpointing with whom in their circle it might be. He suspects Molly's old school friend Birdie, Wang Ye-ming, an eccentric playwright who may or may not have plagiarised the aforementioned novelist's earlier work. In actuality, Akim's trusted business advisor, Larry, that's Danny Deng, is the one trying to get together with Molly. And this is despite Larry having not only a wife, but also a mistress, aspiring actress Feng, Richie Lee, who it just so happens he helped get a job at Molly's company. Now, also working at Molly's company is another close school friend of hers, and that's Chi Cheng Xiang Ji, in one of her early roles, before she became synonymous with the films of another Taiwanese new wave filmmaker, Tsai Ming-liang. Yang throws us into, well, confusion of a Confucian confusion, without a great deal of exposition first. We learn about these characters by watching them in the moment, such as when Molly fires Feng in a fit of rage. Chi and Ming have a screaming fight in the back of a cab, and Larry attempts to tiptoe around Molly's inquisitive questions during a car ride together. Now, Yang, more so than any filmmaker since Rainer Werner Fassbinder, was a master at blocking actors within a frame to focus on their characters' feelings and their relationships. In a Confucian Confusion, that blocking involves keeping elements hidden, such as masking an actor in shadow so you can only read the shape of their body language, or hiding them behind an element of the set so you can't read anything at all. You can only hear them and guess at what lies their voice might be telling. And in the pivotal encounter between Molly and Ming in a dark alley, Yang frames their shadowy figures in a wide shot as Molly pounds on Ming's chest in rage. As the scene progresses, their silhouettes gradually stop fighting and they start embracing. And because of the way Yang depicts the scene, it's difficult to pinpoint the exact moment the nature of the encounter changes. But that's a large part of what makes it such an intensely felt moment. Newly restored in 4K by the Taiwan Film and Audiovisual Institute with the support of Yang's widow, Kei Li Ping, and Kaleidoscope Pictures, A Confucian Confusion looks lovely. The flaws and stains in the print used for the restoration are nowhere to be found, but it still has a grain and palette that one associates with films from that era. And at a time when the aesthetic of the 90s is coming back into vogue, the film serves up many moments of that aesthetic at its best. The women in particular look fantastic, clad as they are in a variety of stylish little black dresses that would still make for ideal office attire, almost nowadays in fact. Yet even though the film depicts Taipei at a very specific time in its tumultuous history, the personal struggles that Yang explores in A Confucian Confusion remain timeless. Now we move on to his next film, also in this set, and that's Mahjong from 1996. There's just a 2-year gap here between the two films. It's not related to Confucian Confusion, and it's a comedy written and directed solely by Edward Yang. It stars Chang Chen, Nick Erikson and Virginie Ledoyon, and it got an honourable mention at the 46th Berlin International Film Festival. Mahjong follows a group of friends as they make a living off of petty scams, and indeed they intermingle with all classes within the city. There's the leader, Red Fish, Tang Kong Sheng, whose jaded worldview was shaped by his absent father, who disappeared after going hundreds of millions into debt. The aforementioned Hong Kong, Hang Zhen, whose main responsibility is seducing girls, either for the friends to share or for a scam. We've little Buddha, Wang Qizan, a fake prophet, and newcomer Luen Kei Yo Lun, who possesses for the most naivety and longs for connections to those around him. Now, the film splits into subplots following each of the friends, all centred around varying understandings of human connection. Luen falls for a Parisian woman named Martha, that's Virginie Ledoyon, and tries to find a place for them within their corrupt environment. He shields her from Ginger and Red Fish's plots to pimp her out for profit. Hong Kong, with little Buddha's help, seduces a rich older Hong Kongese woman to scam her out of her new apartment. Red Fish fights with a chip on his shoulder as he struggles with his vanished father, believing that no one here knows what they want. They just want someone to tell them what they want, what they do. Flip-flopping between Mandarin, Hokkien and English, the film's angsty and vulgar dialogue is one of its strongest points. However, the English subtitles do struggle to keep up with some of the creativity of Chinese curse words, often simplifying them to their most basic form. Now, themes and often exact proverbs are repeated by many characters throughout the film. Red Fish's rant to his father, for instance, is one of the highlights and reveals so much about his worldview. The most important thing to a con is not to use your emotions. For us to be as successful as we are, we never invoke our emotions. most characters have already become so jaded in their view of their world that only conniving remains open to them. Despite being masked in absurdist humour at times, there are no emotions involved in the film, just manipulation and personal gain. Now, like many Chinese films of the 90s, the grimness of the city is stylized yet not glamorized. Mahjong offers us dizzying views into all classes of society, from rundown hostels hosting expats and barren houses to the lavish apartments of businessmen who think they are higher than they actually are. The charm of the city is impressive, and the bustle and seemingly never-ending opportunities for profit are enticing. Smoking, as is true in most movies set in cities solely illuminated by neon lights, becomes cool again. Now, at the core of Mahjong is an exploration of human connections. After all, what sort of connection is possible in this world? Friendships seem transactional, and sex certainly is. The friends strictly prohibit kissing, believing it brings bad luck, a testament to their pessimistic stance on romance. Redfish, traumatized from his father's bankruptcy, caused by a mistress, pretty much swears off all connections. Hong Kong, despite his frequent sexcapades, takes no emotional pleasure from any woman, throwing out I love yous like stale candy. And eventually, after he is raped by the old woman's friends, he breaks down into a near catatonic state, leaving the friends and the audience without any closure here. The fight for survival, for prosperity, leaves no room for emotions. Real connections, like the love Luen Luen naively seeks from Martha, are points of weakness, rendering you vulnerable to all those waiting to exploit you at any moment. Now, to be fair, Mahjong does capture the interactions among a diverse group of combative, frustrated and frustrating individuals who borrow a cliché. They can't see the forest for the trees. Set in modern Taipei, the film begins with titles announcing that entrepreneurial Winston Chen, who's amassed billions in debt despite a lucrative kindergarten franchise, hides from gangsters who believe kidnapping his son will drive their prey into the open. Now, despite that setup, Mahjong's first hour, plus rather like the game Mahjong itself, requires patience for any payoff, and the necessary indulgence here is accepting thoroughly sexist banter among young men and subservient needy women, and the plot eventually leading to caricatured mobsters. Though the actors are 100% committed here, because writer-director Wang often used non-professionals in his films, the performances are frequently amateurish in a losing enterprise despite the solid critique of capitalist Taiwan. No longer guided by traditional values, adrift in a corrupt culture, the characters depicted here flail about, grasping for an elusive anchor of any constructive import. In a new 4K restoration, Mahjong is in Mandarin and Minnan with English subtitles. It's a dazzling vision of a multicultural Taipei where nearly every relationship has a price and newfound prosperity comes at the expense of the human soul. These two intricately constructed ensemble comedies, one set in a cutthroat corporate milieu and the other in a shady criminal underworld, reveal the absurdity and cynicism at the heart of modern urban life. Now let's take a look at the features on the discs. We have a new 4K digital restoration with 5.0 surround DTS HD Master Audio soundtrack. Excerpts of director Edward Yang speaking after a 1994 screening of A Confucian Confusion. New interview with editor Cheng Po Wen. New conversation between Chinese cultural studies scholar Michael Berry and the film critic Justin Chang. And a performance of Yang's 1992 play, Likely Consequence. And an essay by film programmer and critic Dennis Lim, and a 1994 director's note on A Confucian Confusion. Cover art is designed by Tori Hun. A Confucian Confusion has a running time of 129 minutes, and it comes in a 1:8:5:1 aspect ratio in Mandarin and Taiwanese, and Mahjong has a running time of 120 minutes and comes in a 1:8:5:1 aspect ratio, and they release as a 2-disc Blu-ray set on Tuesday the 19th of August, collectively as Spine 1275. Next time on Let's Talk Criterion, we'll be taking a look at Vittorio De Sica's Shoeshine, coming to the collection on 4K UHD. So until then, from me, as always, it's goodbye, and above all, good Criterion viewing.